And hello again, and here we are back on my drive for part 5 of my Reboot series on this, my Moto Guzzi Cafe Racer project. So in part 4, we ended on a high when I finally got the engine to fire up at last. Oh, and one more bit of good news. I've recently weighed the bike, the bodywork, the battery and so on, so I know what the total is. And I was very pleased with the result, because the result says it weighs 423 pounds. Now in comparison, a California 3, which is what this bike was originally, so like an American cruiser, that weighs in at 550 pounds, or around 250 kilos. So it's lost an awful lot of weight, which I'm very pleased about. However, that's a bit of an unfair comparison. I should really compare it to a Le Mans Mark 1, since that's what I'm trying to build. But even there, a Le Mans Mark 1 is 435 pounds dry. You can add at least 10 or 15 pounds to that weight to get a wet weight, which also includes the oils and in the gearbox and the engine and the brake fluid and so on, which my bike has. So I've lost at least probably 20 pounds off the weight of a Le Mans Mark 1, which I'm really pleased with. It's no wonder, because I've stripped the bike down. It's now got aluminium bodywork and so on, which is much lighter than steel. That said, a Le Mans Mark 1 allegedly makes 80 brake horsepower. I actually don't think it does, but that's what the spec says. Whereas my bike is softly tuned. It's tuned more for torque than for horsepower, for top end, and it only makes 65 brake horsepower, and that's from a 1000cc engine compared to an 850 of a Le Mans Mark 1. So what I want to do is, at some point in the future, get some more power out of this engine. It's very softly tuned. The carbs on it, which I've spent so much time rebuilding, are only 30 millimeters in diameter, whereas Le Mans Mark 1, which again is only an 850, has 40 mil carbs, which is actually too big for the bike, truth be told. So what I want to do is probably fit some 36 mil carbs to my bike, fit some Le Mans heads, although they're difficult to find. They're sort of big valve heads, very difficult to find and very expensive. So what I might do is get these heads modified, gas flowed and fitted with bigger valves at some point in the future. I may even have the barrels bored out to maybe 1100cc and fit some lightweight forged pistons. Again, quite expensive change, but it's something I might do in the future, depending on how I get on with the bike once I've ridden it on the road for a while. I mean, I might find it's too uncomfortable for me now. It's got clip-ons and rear sets. I'm getting old, so I might find, oh god, I can't ride this damn thing anymore. It's too uncomfortable. But if I do like the bike, if I like to ride it, and I think I'm going to keep it for more than a few years, and yeah, I will do that. I will at some point get this engine tuned up and get a lot more power out of it. Certainly a lot more than 65 brake horsepower. I think we should be able to get at least 80, 85, no problem, which should really wake it up. But anyway, that's a subject for a different day or a different year and a different video. So in part 5, we still have an awful lot to do before the bike's finished, and we'll start off by refitting some parts back on the bike. But first, I've got a couple of really boring jobs to do. And that job is to polish this, the aluminium alternator cover, which I have to remove when I time the engine. And so before I put it back on, I thought I'd give it a good polish and bring back a shine. And so there it is, back on the bike. But I've not finished polishing yet, because I've now got to polish up these aluminium lusty stacks, look a bit corroded. So I'll spend a few minutes getting back a polish on these things before to go back on the carbs. Right, that's better. And so now, looking at the lower part of the forks, here we have speedo sender, its cable, and a bracket that comes with the kit. So the sensor here can pass through this little hole, slide. It's got a little threaded hole here into which a grub screw goes, a bit of a mouthful, and holds it in place. Now I have got a clamp bolt here, but that's kind of recessed, so I don't really want to use that clamp bolt. But luckily I've got these two threaded bosses here, which were used originally for the front mudguard stays, which I no longer need, so I can use one of those. And I think I'll use this one here because it's less visible. So I can bolt this bracket, something like that, and then put the sensor like that, something like that, adjust it however you want. You've got to be about 2 or 3 mil from the surface of the disc as it spins round. And what you also have in the kit, I'm not sure I need it yet, but you've got a couple of very powerful magnets. Here they are here, not sure you can tell, but they can go on the steel disc. And so as the wheel spins round, the magnet passes the sensor and sends a signal to the Cosso speedo, which tells the speedo how fast you're going. Now I've used this before, and although the magnets are very, very strong, I also tend to glue them into place. Actually, what you're supposed to do, I think, is put them into an Allen bolt. I think that's the idea. They go inside an Allen bolt. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So now then, I've just got to find a suitable bolt, and we'll bolt this into place, and hopefully it'll look okay. And so now I've got the speedo sender in place, and I've fitted a magnet in the correct spot on the disc. Now I'm not sure if that magnet will stay there when the wheel is spinning around really quickly, but apparently it will, so we'll see what happens in use. If it doesn't, I've got another 5 magnets to go, and I can glue one into the correct spot later on. Right, so the cable here goes up here, and it joins the brake line to go up to the wiring of the bike. For now, I've just zip tied it into place, but not too tight. Doesn't look too good right now, but the cable's been folded up for so long, it's got kinks in it. So I'm going to leave it for a few days, let those kinks sort of settle, and I'll tighten up these zip ties, and hopefully it should follow the line of the brake line and not look too bad. Right, so that's it. One more job completed. And now here we are back on my drive on the first dry day for quite a while. And as you can see, I've now fitted the tank and the seat unit just to check for fitment, to make sure there's no wires getting in the way underneath the tank or the seat unit, and thankfully all is well. And I've now finished wiring up the speedo sender. All the wires now tucked away underneath the tank, so that's fine. I've also now fitted the battery and its tray, there it is there, but I've not yet wired it up, and that's because I don't have the correct size terminals for that battery. The ones I've got are either too big or too small, so I've ordered the correct ones and they're not here yet. So what's next? And so my next job is to mount this, the rear brake light. Now the 2 holes here in the back of the seat unit don't match up with the 2 holes in this bracket, because years ago I made a bracket, a curved bracket, to go behind here, which bolts through these 2 holes here. It then drops down and mounts this in the right position, and it also extends so I can mount the rear number plate. And I made that about 5 years ago, but I can't find it anywhere. It's missing, it's gone. I've looked for it, can't find it. But when I'm looking, I did find this offcut of aluminium plate. And why this is handy is because this is the plate I made the bracket from. And this is not an ordinary piece of aluminium plate, no. This has been rolled because it's been given a curve. See that curve there? And that curve matches the inside curve of this seat unit, just like that. And so with this offcut, I can now make a Mark II version of the missing bracket and hopefully mount the rear brake light and rear lamp without any more problems. So now I'm just going to go away, cut out a shape, drill it, polish it, and hopefully it'll look okay once I've finished. And so let's begin. Right, so I've marked on here where the holes are on the seat unit. So I'm just going to put a little mark on there so I can drill it accurately, like this. The other one is there. So I drill the holes first, because that way if I get it wrong I can always shape the bracket around it. That's not really a problem. So I've just marked those 2 points. I've now got to drill out these 2 holes. Right, here goes. Okay, and now for the second hole, right there. Okay, I think it needs to be a bit bigger, so we'll go to a bigger drill bit. So here we go. And now let's go and check on the bike if this now lines up with the holes on the seat unit. And so here's a quick test fit. It's not bad. I've still got a lot more work to do of shaping and filing this bracket, but we are getting there. And so, having done a bit more work in shaping this mounting bracket, we are getting there. But I'm not finished just yet, because right now this rear lamp is tilting over ever so slightly in that direction, which it shouldn't do, so it needs a bit more work. So once I'm happy with the bracket, I think I'll paint it, because it's aluminium, and where it's sitting right now it's going to get covered in road spray and water and muck and God knows what else, and it'll soon oxidize. So I think it needs to be painted, and I think I'll paint it in an aluminium finish so it matches up with the rest of the bike in this area. So yeah, still more work to do. And so one of the last jobs I've got to do before I can say this bike is truly finished is to sort out the throttle and the throttle cables, and that's not so simple. And so let's go in the garage and I'll try and explain why it's not so simple. And so when it comes to my Guzzi and Guzzis of the same era, the way the throttle cables work is a bit unusual, and so let me show you how it works with this rather crude diagram. So here we have the carburetors here, which both have a throttle cable, and here we have the throttle itself on the handlebar. So the way it works is you get just one cable from the handlebar throttle, and it goes to a gizmo called a splitter. And a splitter is a little sort of barrel shaped affair, and one cable goes in but two cables go out. So then there's 2 cables coming out like that. So that splitter, I've actually got one here, is that thing there, and you can unscrew it. You can see here it's got 2 entries for the cables going back to the carburetors. On this end you've only got one, which goes to the handlebar. If you unscrew it, then there's a little barrel inside which can take 2 cables going out one way and 1 cable the other way. So as you pull the cable from the throttle from the handlebar, it moves inside this tube, and that's what activates the 2 cables going to the 2 carburetors. So that's the way it works. My problem is that first of all, this is clamped to the frame underneath the tank, and that clamp's gone missing. I didn't get it when I had the bike, when I bought the bike. And also the original throttle on the handlebar is integrated with the switchgear, and both the throttle and the switchgear were smashed up when I bought the bike, so I had to get something else. Now I have read that bikes like mine have a very heavy throttle, quite hard to open up. And part of the reason is because it's got quite strong springs in the carbs just to make sure they close when they should. But another reason could be because this splitter here adds friction and stiction to the movement of the cables, particularly if it gets old and worn, or it gets full of muck and rain and God knows what else. So my idea was, let's do away with this idea, and instead let's just get a new bit of paper. Instead I'll have my throttle here, a new throttle that I bought. We've still got our carburetors down here, but now I'm going to have a twin pull throttle, so it takes 2 cables, 1 for each, and I don't need to worry about having a splitter, extra stiction and friction and all that kind of stuff. So that was my plan. And so to that end I bought myself 2 of these, and these are Venhill throttle cable kits. Used them before, good value and good quality. and it's great because they come with a huge variety of fitments and nipples and all that kind of stuff that you can make them fit pretty much any bike. Along with this rather nice Tomaselli Daytona 2C twin pull throttle assembly. And so I've got brand new cables and a brand new throttle. And so what's the problem? Well, the problem is the cables don't fit the throttle, and I've tried all kinds of different cables, all kinds of different options. You get lots of different fitments with these Ben Hill cable kits, but nothing works with that down throttle. The screw thread is different from anything I've got in all the kits that I've bought. I've even tried using another throttle from something else, like a Kawasaki, I think, and it still doesn't fit. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there with that Tomaselli throttle, but I just can't get any cables to fit it. Therefore, I've reluctantly decided to go back to the standard method used on the Guzzi, with just one cable going to a splitter and then going into two separate cables to the carbs. To that end, I've just ordered a brand new throttle again. This one a single pull, and hopefully, you know, its thread where the cable goes is standard, and these throttle kits will work with that particular throttle. Well, I hope so anyway. So yeah, that's something I've got to do when that turns up in the next few days. It does mean, however, that I'm going to have to use this damn thing, this splitter, which I don't want to do that. So what I've done is I bought myself somewhere another one. This is a plastic one. This is a plastic splitter. They're quite cheap, actually, about 10 quid, quite common on eBay. And I'm hopeful that perhaps I can use this, and because it's plastic, I can perhaps zip tie it to the frame tube below the tank, and it won't scratch the hell out of the powder coat on the frame. But if not, I'll just have to make up some kind of bracket to hold this into place so it doesn't move and it's secure beneath the tank. So that's another job to do. So yeah, that's why I've not got the down throttles working yet. Something else I've got to do yet is to wire up the battery finally, because to do that I need to get some not special, but I need some battery terminals, and the ones I've got, they're either too big because they're made for a car, or a bit too small to work with the thick cable running from the battery to the starter motor, because that's quite a thick cable. So I've ordered the kit, only like £9.99, you get about 100 pieces, and that'll last me no doubt a lifetime. When that arrives, we can get those terminals on the battery and get it all wired up, and hopefully that's most of the wiring sorted out. I've still got to sort out a bit more of the wiring for the alternator. The alternator is a bit of a weird thing, but now I've got the official Moto Guzzi workshop manual. It should help me out a little bit, because yeah, the alternator and charging system on my bike is very unusual. It's made by a company called Saprissa, and in Guzzi circles it turns out that even though Guzzis don't have a particularly good reputation for electrics and charging systems, the one I've got is the worst of the bunch. It's well known for being a bit of a problem child, as it were. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works, having been unused for so long, but fingers crossed everything will be okay and it'll work fine. If not, I'll just have to change it and fit something else. There are aftermarket kits out there with modern rectifiers and modern charging systems and modern alternators that I could fit on my bike if needed, but all that is at a price, so fingers crossed I don't need to spend any more money on the bike. Right, so that's where we're up to at the moment, and when these parts arrive we'll get them on the bike, and hopefully we'll be a step closer to getting this damn bike finished at last. And next, here we have the old plastic points cover, which I want to replace with this, a nice brand new shiny aluminium cover. Only problem is this doesn't fit my bike. It should, but it doesn't, and it just won't fit. So when I compared it with the standard version here, I'm not sure you can tell, but if you compare it, this shoulder here is quite a lot higher than the shoulder on this one, and that shoulder is hitting the frame rails nearby as well as the edge of the cylinder head fins. So I'm not happy about that, because this is supposed to be made to fit my bike and it doesn't. So yeah, I think that'll have to go back. I did look at it a little bit more and thought, well, perhaps I could machine off a bit off this shoulder and bring it down a bit, but you can't, because this is a cast piece, it's not a machine piece, and yeah, the material's really thin there, so if you machine it down you're just going to break through and cause a hole, so that's no good. So sadly that can't go on the bike, and instead I'll just buy myself a new one of these that's not so scratched and battered. And another item that's just arrived is this little box of battery terminals of all different sizes, as you can see, small ones and big ones and whatever. So now I can make up the new battery cables for the bike and get them fitted. And so with the battery now wired up, the bike is pretty much finished. Everything works except for one indicator, I think this one here, that doesn't work. I suspect it's because I've got a bad earth somewhere, so I've got to chase that down. So yeah, it's all pretty much finished now, except of course also for the fact I need a new throttle, and that's not arrived yet, but that's due any day now. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the bike overall, and everything works, thank God. And just to prove it, I'll turn on the ignition, which is down here. Not a particularly good place to put it, but there you go. And hopefully, if I press this button here, it might just fire up. Come on, hang on, it might help if I put the chokes on, since it's all cold. Try again. There you go. Oh, a bit smoky. Yeah. Oh, it's smoky. Yeah. And even the rev counter works. Let me move the camera and you can see it. We can hear it a bit better. And so I've now moved the camera and I'll move the mic to the back of the bike, and so you can hear what it sounds like, a bit more like reality, because right now you're not really hearing it as I hear it. So let me go and move the microphone and we'll start the bike up again. Hopefully it won't smoke too much. That bit. Try again. Right, okay, and there you go. And so there it is running, and hopefully the mic picked up the sound. It's actually not as loud as I thought it might be. These are stainless steel replicas of a Le Mans Mark 1, and I have heard a Le Mans Mark 1 and a Le Mans Mark 2, and I'm sure it's a bit louder than that. So anyway, I'm not too concerned. As I get older, having really loud motorbikes doesn't appeal quite so much. So yeah, everything seems to work, although I have noticed that although the oil pressure light went out on the dash, the neutral light wasn't on when I started the bike then, so I'll have to chase down that particular wire and work out why not and get it wired up correctly on the bike. But apart from that, and one indicator that doesn't flash, no doubt because I've got a bad earth somewhere, the bike is pretty much finished. You know, the headlamps coming on, horn works and so on, rear lamps on, the brake lights work. Yeah, so overall I'm pretty happy with the result. Now over the winter I will do a bit more work on this bike, just little things like making sure all the connections are perfect, making sure these idiot lights come on when they should, and so on and so on. But that really doesn't warrant a video all by itself. So even though I don't yet have my throttle cables yet, or rather my new throttle, got the cables, haven't got the throttle yet. You can tell then was to try and start the bike and reaching for the throttle to do this, but of course it doesn't do anything because I've got no throttle cables fitted on the bike yet. So I think this is a good time to end the video. It's getting a bit dark now actually. There's a big dark cloud just over there and the forecast is rain within the next half an hour. So I'm going to put the bike away, and the next time you see this bike may well be in the spring when it's all finished, all running and on the road, and I'll probably try and do some kind of you know, sort of owner's review when I've ridden it a little bit, when I've got some miles on the bike, and no doubt there'll be lots of little niggly problems that I don't know about yet that I'll discover as I put the miles on the bike. The good news though is, after I fired the bike up then it was a bit smoky at first, but it soon cleared, and I think that's because the smoke is due to me putting an awful lot of oil down the plug holes years ago to make sure, you know, I had plenty of lubrication in the barrels back then, because I knew it was going to be a long time before this bike was running again. So yeah, that's about it really. So this is the 5th and last video of my Reboot series on this Moto Guzzi Cafe Racer project of mine that I've had for more than 10 years. And now that's going to go back in the garage. I'm going to give it a good clean because it needs it. The aluminium wheels in particular are really dirty and could do with a good clean. And then we'll just have to wait until next year when I put this bike on the road at last. I'm not doing it now because right now it's sort of late July, and we only get another 6 or 8 weeks worth of good weather before the rain and the wind and the hail come, and the gritters are out and they put grit and salt on our roads, which is no good to these kind of motorbikes. It just eats them alive. So when the gritters come out, my bikes go back in the garage until the spring. So that's about it then. So thanks for watching and cheers.